problem-solving, multi-step multiplication problems. As students progress through their mathematics, one of the skills that we work on is problem solving. These are the more real-world experiences with mathematics that students will encounter. In fourth grade, we really work on the multi-step problems. These are mathematical problems that require more than one mathematical process in which to solve. What we emphasize is that students truly look at the question they're being asked to solve and to devise a plan on how to solve it. And this can be tricky for some of the boys and girls thinking through the problem before we do any of the math. Let's have a look. Suppose we had this problem. Amy planted 8 rows with 8 tulips in each row. In each of the 4 middle rows, there are 4 red tulips. All of the other tulips are yellow. How many of the tulips are yellow? The first thing we want to do is identify the question that we are asked to solve, and that is how many of the tulips are yellow. So when we're done with the math, our answer should answer that question. How many tulips are yellow? Now what we know is that some of the tulips are red, some of them are yellow. We also know that they are planted in 8 rows with 18 tulips in each row. So thinking this problem through, we should be able to come up with how many tulips there are altogether, and we should also be able to determine how many of the tulips are red. And since we know there are only red and yellow tulips, if we knew that there were, say, 10 tulips altogether and 4 of them are red, we would be able to determine that 6 of them are yellow. 10 minus 4 is 6. So using that mentality, let's see if we can apply that to the situation we have. There are 8 rows of tulips, and there's 18 tulips in each row. Well, that is a math problem that we can solve. This will tell us how many tulips there are altogether. And using some of the skills we've learned recently, this is the same thing as 8 times 10 plus 8, which of course is the same thing as 8 times 10 plus 8 times 8. And using our basic skills, or basic multiplication facts, 8 times 10, is 80, and 8 times 8 is 64. So now we have 80 plus 64, and that comes out to 144. That is how many tulips there are altogether. That is helpful information. That does not answer our question, how many of the tulips are yellow, but we will need this number. Our next part of the problem is how many of the tulips are red? And coming back, it says there are 4 rows with 4 red tulips. So that is something we should be able to solve as well. 4 rows of 4 red tulips would be 16 red tulips. Alrighty. So with that information, we knew there were 144 tulips altogether. 16 of them are red. To figure out how many are yellow, if we subtracted the 16 from 144, that would tell us how many of them are yellow. And we should be able to do that. 4 minus 6 can't be done, so we're going to borrow from our neighbor. He'll become a 3. The 4 will become a 14. 14 minus 6 is 8. 3 minus 1 is 2. Bring down the 1. So there are 128 yellow tulips. The question we were asked are, how many of the tulips are yellow? 128. How did we arrive at that? First, we calculated how many tulips there were altogether. That was 144. We got that by 8 rows of tulips. There's 18 tulips in each row. That's 144 tulips altogether. Then we calculated that there were 16 red tulips. We got that from our problem. It said 4 rows had 4 red tulips in them. Now, there would be 14 yellow tulips because there's 18 tulips altogether, but we're just concentrating on the red first. There would be 16 red tulips. Well, if there's only red and yellow tulips, if we subtract out the red, that will tell us how many yellow there are. Boys and girls need to think through the word problems, devise a plan, and then enact the plan. We're using more than one multiplication or more than one mathematical process to solve these problems. This is problem solving, multi-step multiplication problems.